Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for February 12th, 2023. In the security and privacy alerts section, Amazon is finally going to block by default public access to S3 buckets after all of these breaches that are caused by hopefully inadvertent access or public credentials for S3 buckets. They're finally going to block it by default, but they're not going to block existing um, S3 buckets. So, if you have scripts or automation that automatically generates new S3 buckets and assumes that those buckets are going to be public, you need to change that. But I think most people, that's going to be a no-brainer. And I suspect that most people are wondering, why is it that it took Amazon so long to go do this? I don't know the answer to that. Um, there's an interesting side effect that people are reporting on the potential ban of TikTok by government and corporate entities. Um, you know, the I don't know that the model is bad. I think it's probably good. For one question, why is it you need TikTok um, on a corporate device anyway? Because it seems like the company shouldn't be paying you to play TikTok, right? But and there's probably a few exceptions to that, like people who are involved in posting media, but I think those are the exceptions rather than the rules. But I do think there's going to be an interesting side effect of that. And in Texas, they just released the new rules that they're coming out with, and they're pretty good rules. They're saying, if you're a contractor or you're an employee, you can't install that software plus a whole bunch of other software, which is also Chinese, on your company-owned, agency-owned devices. But they're also saying that if you have it installed on personal devices, that you can't bring those devices into sensitive areas. Um, for a lot of people, a lot of companies, if this kind of model goes on, where they kind of dependent on BYOD devices, I think people are going to say, gee, if you're trying to tell me what I can and cannot install on my own device, then I'm just not going to use my personal device for business. You can talk to me 9 to 5 when I'm in the office. Outside of that, sorry. Um, and alternatively, you can give me a company-owned device, which I think a lot of companies are not going to want to do because of the expense. But I think that a lot of people are not going to be in a situation where they're just going to go off and roll over. Especially in a tight labor market. I think that people will say, okay, whatever. Um, I do know of people that have company-owned devices, and they turn them off or leave them at home when they're not working. So, if the boss, wants to get a hold of you, good luck with that because the device is sitting, in my bathroom, while I'm out, doing whatever I'm doing. So I think that's an interesting side effect. I don't necessarily think that banning it off company-owned devices is a bad thing, but I think when you get into personal devices, I think that's going to be a bit dicier. I don't think people are just going to roll over for that one. Um, Also under alerts, we're seeing more VMware ESXi attacks as a new attack, which they say is more difficult to recover from. Backups still work, but if you didn't have backups or you didn't want to have to restore from backups, the first attack, which they announced last week, was recoverable, sort of, kind of, pretty much. But this attack is not. So, and this goes back to a 2021 patch, except that some people are now saying that they've patched the SLP hole or disabled SLP, and they're still getting hacked. So I'd say watch for VMware patches and install them rapidly because it sounds like this is going around, so to speak. Next in the reference section, for those of you who are involved in the IoT space, which seems like a lot of us are getting to that point, NIST has released a new family of both authentication and hashing algorithms known as ASCON. And they're designed for lightweight cryptography. The algorithms are designed to protect information from sensors and all kinds of little low power, low computing sources. And it'll be nice to have a standardized way of doing that as opposed to, you know, people writing their own so-called encryption, which is probably not very good. What that means is that if you're buying these devices and there's sensitive stuff, you need to understand what encryption algorithms the people are using and push them in the direction of using these new standardized algorithms. In the software realm, is kind of interesting. Google seems to be a bit behind the eight ball, as I've said before. You know, Microsoft announced a $10 billion investment in Chat GPT, and now they're in the process of rolling out Chat GPT into Bing, which is interesting because what they want to do is build this integrated search environment, which is very mature and has all kinds of functionality above and beyond search. So Google issued a code red internally saying, gee, we're in trouble here. They then announced a new product, which they kind of haven't really delivered, called Bard. Um, Unfortunately, when they did the launch, the so-called, I guess it's a soft launch, technically it's a launch demo, it didn't give the right answer, which in fact is a legitimate problem with all AI, right? I mean, we should not assume that this stuff is infallible. And what we're seeing, people using AI to write code, and the code's got bugs in it. So be careful how you use it. But nonetheless, um, it's a problem, and Microsoft is attempting to drive a stake through the heart of Google. Google has historically really beat the crap out of Microsoft. So this is all good for consumers. It'll probably take a while to sort itself out, but it's still useful as it is, as long as you understand the limitations and don't assume gospel just because it came from some AI bot that was written at Microsoft or Google. In the important patches realm, people tell me, well, open source is great because there's lots of people looking at it, and therefore it's more secure than closed source. Well, the reality is, for most open source software, almost nobody looks at it. Yes, technically it's possible you can do that, but most people have neither the time nor the skill to go do that. OpenSSL is a perfect example of that. It is one of the most widely used open source products, and yet we wind up with these high severity bugs all the time, multiple times a year. They're now releasing a new version of OpenSSL. There are 7 high vulnerability bugs that are patched in this newest version of OpenSSL. But the problem you have is, without a software bill of materials, which I harp on repeatedly, you don't know who's running what version of OpenSSL, excuse me, whatever product you're running. And so you don't know whether you're vulnerable or not. In the education department, in honor of Valentine's Day this week, the FBI is running a series of alerts, and I have several links here in the newsletter to the issue of ransomware. I'm sorry, of romance scams. The FBI says that last year they had reports of 19,000 victims losing more than $700 million to romance scams. This doesn't include all of the pig butchering scams, which is a version of that, where they typically try to do a pump and dump scheme on crypto. The reality is it's a lot bigger than that because people are embarrassed losing money, and so now this would probably be a good time to warn your employees about it. And it's I don't love you, I love your wallet. So, beware, I guess. And the breaches department continues unabated. An Irish university, the Munster Technological University, confirmed that they had a ransomware attack that forced them to shutter 4 of their campuses in Cork. They're going to go teach remotely until they can get things back together, but they don't know exactly how long that's going to be. And they do say that they do not plan on paying the ransom. So that's good. The online grocery service We is hacked. Apparently, there's 11 million records on the dark web. one more time, they said, "Oh, gee, look, your credit card wasn't stolen." Well, the thing you got to remember is the credit card's the easiest thing to fix because all you do is call the credit card company and say it was stolen, and they give you a new one. What was stolen is the delivery instructions. And if the delivery instructions included things like gate codes or locks or anything like that, how to bypass your security services, which certainly is reasonable if they're delivering groceries, that's now out in the wild, and you may need to change that. So that's a kind of a bigger problem than losing your credit card. Next, the Regal Medical Group, which is in California, reported an attack, cyber attack. They lost data on 3.3 million people. This is one of those really bad attacks because, in addition to all the normal stuff like name and address and social and stuff like that, you also lost diagnosis and treatment information, lab results, prescription data, radiology reports, and insurance information. So it's kind of the whole enchilada there. I predict the lawsuits will be very large. Remember, this is California, where there is a private right of action. I am sure there will be multiple, and they will be consolidated. So if you kind of look at the worst case scenario here, these guys, and it is a worst case scenario, it's not going to be this big. $750 per person without showing damages, more if you can show damages, times 3 million people is about $2+ billion, which I'm sure will bankrupt them if that happens. I'm sure it won't be that bad, but even if it's $1 billion, if it's $500 million, what does that do? Um, you know, I'm sure that they're going to go off and try to claim that this is protected by HIPAA, and so therefore it's excluded. Not sure whether that's true. They're still going to wind up going through the court system. They're going to try to get it dismissed, I am sure, but we shall see where that goes. So, anyway, in the daily information, this is an interesting one. So, websites often collect data. They do it to improve user experience and fix bugs and stuff. But we're seeing a series of lawsuits now, which claim, and I can get the claim whether the courts will agree that this is meets the definition of these various laws, where collecting this data actually breaks the law. So it's probably useful if you are running a website, check what data you're collecting and kind of get a sense of whether or not what the risk factor is for you. It depends kind of what you're doing. But apparently the lawsuits are happening. Next, Cisco, which is a reputable organization, so it's not some fly-by-night organization. Obviously, they sell security stuff, so they want to hype things up. But still, they surveyed organizations across the globe, all over the globe, from the U.S., U.K., Australia, Japan, all over the place. And they said 92% of the people who responded said that they made security compromises to their applications during the pandemic due to the urgency to innovate. And 78%, which is a pretty sizable number, believe that their business is vulnerable to a multi-stage security attack over the next 12 months. So that's not very far away. This is not like a hypothetical thing. And that attack could affect their entire software stack. So if you're an organization that uses software, which is pretty much everybody today, and the software is key to your business, you might want to kind of look at the security side of your applications, which I think is a area where people have been sadly remiss in doing that. If you need help, obviously we're here to do that. We can help you in a variety of different ways. And it includes everything from a secure software development framework to application penetration testing and everything in between. So if you're not already doing that, you might seriously want to consider that. Next, we're seeing some interesting challenges with the emergency alerts on people's phones. Some people get them, some people don't get them. Sometimes the alerts don't go out to the right people. Sometimes they go out to tens of thousands of people who are the wrong people. So from that perspective, it's interesting. And there are some challenges with older phones. And of course, people are becoming less likely to go buy new phones because the features aren't anywhere near as compelling anymore. So it's an interesting problem with all the wildfires going on and floods and hurricanes and tornadoes. Probably important to understand what your employees' capabilities are, just for their own safety, because no one wants to see their employees get hurt, and make sure that they're doing whatever they can to go deal with that. And last, in the security news bites section, um, you know, yeah, one report I read says, if you think the Chinese balloon incident is a major wake-up call, well, bottom line, as we've seen, since we continue to shoot down more objects, it's just business as usual. So from that perspective, yeah, maybe it's alarming, but it's certainly nothing new. European police have hacked an encrypted messaging app that caters to the bad guys, and they've arrested dozens of people, which is a good thing. Auto dealers are prime targets for hackers, and there's now new security rules for auto dealers, which will make them be more aware. We'll see whether the Federal Trade Commission actually enforces it, but they have until June to get their act together. I think what we're going to see is the FTC going after the large auto dealers, and they're probably in the best shape. Don't know, but it'll be interesting to see. Hackers are going old school when it comes to credit card fraud or that kind of financial fraud, because credit cards are becoming more secure and it's harder to hack them. So they're going old school, and apparently it's working pretty good. So that's interesting. And in the AI wars, as a follow-up to the item earlier, Google lost $100 billion in valuation, which is kind of a mind-boggling number to me, in this past week as a result of the screw up on their demo of Bard. And at the same time, users are flocking to Microsoft to go get the Bing AI stuff. And in fact, there's a huge, and I do mean huge, waiting list for people to get to the Bing AI stuff. And it's a more compelling solution anyway. So kind of interesting. So please reach out to us if we can be of any assistance. And until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.